I think I'm live on Instagram, and now I am live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm here to talk about this time travel thing. So I'm going to talk about it from both the point of view of a writer and a fan. One more time. I'm going to talk about it both from the point of view of a writer and as a fan. I want to make that clear. Okay? So, a few things we have to establish, and we have to establish the different theories that we're talking about because they're not all the same. And the fact that many times they're not clearly defined is what can add to the confusion to an audience in a story. So we're going to go through that. First thing I'm going to talk about is the elliptical theory of time travel, the elliptical theory, and that says that the future causes the past, causes the future. You see this in Terminator, the first Terminator. That's when Skynet wants to kill John, but its plan is to stop John from ever being born by killing his mom, and then in T2 killing him. That means it's the exact same reality because Skynet expects their present to change based on them eliminating John in the past. That's the exact same reality. But when the resistance sees that, then future John sends Kyle back. But Kyle doesn't know that he's John's dad. Okay? So Kyle coming back is because it's from the future where Skynet was winning, but they destroyed the factory and blew the whole place, as Kyle said. And nobody goes home. But Kyle coming back causes John to be born. That's the future causing the past, causing the future. That's an elliptical model. You also see that in Star Trek 4, the one with the whales. That's an elliptical model because they come back to the exact same point where they left from, just literally seconds from the moment they left. That's the same reality, okay? They changed their present, which was the probe destroying the Earth, with some elements from the past, which was the whales and Dr. Julian Taylor. So they displaced them, they time displaced them, but it's still elliptical because Scotty, when he gives a formula for transparent aluminum to Wilfred Schmuck engineer, he says, McCoy says, how do we know we're not changing the future? Scotty says, why? How do we know he didn't invent the thing? When Captain Kirk is selling his glasses, Spock says, weren't those a gift from Dr. McCoy? Kirk says, and they will be again. That's the beauty of it. That's all elliptical. That's the same reality. Okay? All right. Next one is single branch time theory. Now, single branch is when an event change in the past causes time to branch off in a different direction. The flow of events is altered, okay, but the original timeline still exists, but it slowly fades out of existence as the new branch takes root. That's most prominently used in Back to the Future because Marty's family, Marty himself, and other events like the "you're fired" note, they keep erasing, and they keep erasing because they're changing as the new single branch is taking root and as it's being shaped by Marty's choices in that new branch. But the old branch is still there; it's just fading. This is also the one that was used in Flashpoint from the comics. Because when Barry time traveled in Flashpoint in the comics, not the movie, he remembered the original timeline where Bruce was Batman and not Thomas Wayne. But Barry kept getting these violent migraines because his memories were literally being rewritten as the new single branch timeline got solidified. Okay. And that's why Barry knew he had to fix it before the original fully fades away. And he forgot everything that happened, and he forgot that Bruce was Batman, and he forgot everything that he came from. That's single branch. Okay, you do something in the past, it causes a new branch to go off. The old branch still exists, but it begins to fade as the new one takes root. So you have to fix it before it completely fades away. Back to the Future and Flashpoint from the comics. Then we have multi-branch. Multi-branch is where changing past events creates a new branch based on those changes, but it doesn't erase the original timeline at all. So multi-branch is that something happens and you go back in the past and you change some events, you create a new branch, but the old one's still there. It's not fading, okay? So as many times as you do that, you just create new branches. That's multi-branch. That's what they use in Avengers Endgame when they said that the past doesn't change the future. That means you're creating new timelines, but leaving the old ones intact. Okay. So that's why the movie tries to say at the end, Captain America never went into the ice because he wouldn't have been old when he got back, but he didn't go into the ice. He stayed with Peggy. Okay. But the question still becomes, did the other branches still happen? And everybody that defends that movie says, yes, they still did happen. So original Steve created a life where he didn't go in the ice, but there was still the branch where he did go in the ice. And so we still had First Avenger, Winter Soldier, Civil War, all that still happened. But our original Steve that first did that created a new life for himself where he actually grew up with Peggy. So all those branches are still there. That's what that movie is trying to sell you. And my question is, did he change Bucky's past? Did he think about that? But that's another conversation. Then we have the fulcrum time travel theory. The fulcrum, this is the one used in the Flash movie. And that's where Bat Keaton explains that traveling in the past means that time is more like spaghetti, which means when you change anything, it changes stuff in both directions. So when you alter an event in the past, in the fulcrum model, you change the past and the future, and then you position yourself at an angle against the reality or the timeline you first came from. So you're at a 22 or 45-degree angle or whatever, and then that means you're creating all new stuff from a completely different perspective. So Keaton says that makes it end up like spaghetti. So fulcrum means that you have these other branches, but reality might start crashing, and some will be stronger, some will be straight, some will be completely curved and noodled. Okay, so that might be considered a form of multi-branch. Okay. But the Flash movie does not stay true to that. It mixes a bunch of different versions of time travel and alternate reality stuff, which I'm going to get to next. Okay. But the Flash movie does not use one theory. That's the main theory, is the fulcrum, but more happens. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the same space theory. That's the one that Time Cop uses that says it's primarily elliptical, meaning you change something in the past, it changes the timeline where you came from. It's the same reality, but you cannot interact with yourself and you can't physically touch yourself. Because if you physically touch yourself, you turn into a big old blob with little teeth and all that, because two of the same thing can't occupy the same space at the same time. So that solidifies it as elliptical. It's the same reality. But, 34-year-old you can't go back and talk to 18-year-old you, and y'all can't, high five or fist bump or whatever, because then you blink out of existence. So from that point forward, you don't exist anymore. So try and figure that mess out. Next, we have my most hated, which is the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect says changing the past can only result in tragedy in the future. That's why I hate it, because it's statistically impossible that every change made in the past can only result in tragedy. And every time you use the butterfly effect model, that's exactly what happens. Now, I'm not saying I don't enjoy those stories, because I do. The Sound of Thunder, the Ray Bradbury story that started all this, I love those stories. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't buy the idea that whenever you change something in the past, it has to result in a tragic future. And that's what butterfly effect says, that the smallest little thing means a catastrophe when you get back to where you came from. Now, we see this in City on the Edge of Forever from original Star Trek, the original series, where Edith Keeler must die. Okay, if she don't die, then the Nazis win World War II because of her interference or her creations or some stuff that she did led to the Nazis winning. And so Spock and McCoy had to stop Kirk from saving her. He has to give her up to save the world, because if she don't die, then the Nazis win World War II, and that changes everything. There's no other option, supposedly. because Kirk could have always kidnapped her and went back to his time, but that's another conversation. Okay. And then that horrid movie with Ashton Kutcher named The Butterfly Effect. Every time he changes the past in an attempt to improve it, because there's all kind of nasty stuff going on in the past and there's all kind of destructive stuff. And their childhood was jacked up. I've rarely seen a childhood as jacked up as them kids. It was awful. Every time he tried to fix something from it, it resulted in an even worse future. Sometimes for him, sometimes for the other kids involved. But it was never good. And the only time that time leaves him alone is when he gives up his girlfriend. When he gives up the girl he's loved his whole life, then all of a sudden time is okay with that one. That's why I can't stand it. It keeps saying the result must be tragic or else time ain't going to leave you alone until you got to give up the person you love or something like that. No, that is statistically impossible. That's time as an agent of cruelty, which doesn't make any sense because time would be morally neutral. Just think about it, okay? Next up, I got to deal with some more Star Trek stuff because Star Trek also uses multiple theories. In Star Trek 4, we talked about that. That's elliptical, where they brought the whales from the past to fix their future, but they left a few seconds. Excuse me, they returned a few seconds before they left. That's the same reality, same timeline. There's Star Trek, The Next Generation. They use something called quantum reality, which is not time travel per se. Quantum reality, best example is the episode Parallels, which is one of my favorite episodes, by the way. Quantum reality means that every choice that can be made has been made, but every one of them vibrates at a different quantum frequency. So for you to identify which timeline reality you're in and to get back to the one you came from, you've got to find the frequency. You've got to test your body to see what frequency you vibrate at. Then you got to find the timeline that matches that, and that's how you get back home. Okay? That's not time travel per se. That's saying that every choice that can be made has been made, and they all vibrate at different frequencies in relatively the same space. That's why Worf was able to visit so many different scenarios, even one where he and Deanna were married. We also got that incredible bearded Riker scene where he said the Borg were everywhere and he wasn't going back. I love that. If you love that episode, that was peak, man. That was so awesome. Okay. So we had all those enterprises popping in to the main space because the divisions between those realities were breaking down. And Riker was like, I ain't going back to mine because I can't even get a Pepsi. The Borg didn't assimilated my soft drinks. Okay. So the same thing happens in All Good Things in Star Trek TNG. That's quantum reality. Time travel is more of a subset plot there because they have to alter everything that's going on by straddling the different things, but they're all existing, okay, but vibrating at different frequencies, and that's why they start colliding and they mess stuff up, okay? All right. So back to Parallels, they send Worf to the place where the realities diverge, but not necessarily the time. Because the time was when he came back from winning the Bat'leth tournament. And that's when he tapped into the different quantum realities. So that was more, again, quantum reality in space. Okay? However, in Star Trek Voyager, Year of Hell, Anarax constructs a weapon ship in an attempt to return the Crenum Imperium to power because he wants to erase the enemies. Part of that has to be elliptical because he expects to get back to where he came from with no enemies to the Crenum Imperium, right? But the second time he tries it, he eliminates Kiana Prime, the Kiana Prime colony, and with it his wife. So then he spends 2 centuries trying to restore Kiana Prime in the Imperium. So that's kind of a mix of elliptical and maybe single branch, maybe. It's not purely either one, okay? Because he's trying to get, and it might even be quantum reality. He's trying to get back to a reality where his wife is alive, but does he also want the enemies destroyed? Because that's a change. So it seems like it's a mix of elliptical, but also single branch, okay? So then it also mixes in butterfly effect because Voyager shows up in 2374 and they only get restored to the original reality where he and his wife are together on Kiana Prime, when Voyager destroys that weapon ship. So that's another one where, this is one of the few times that Voyager's interference or somebody interfering with the whole time thing actually results in a happier future. Okay. But then there's another one, I forget the name of it. There's another one where 7 of 9 is traveling through time, and the temporal police that are chasing her, the dude that's in charge of that is actually the betrayer. He's actually the one that, was messing with everything. Y'all tell me the name of that episode. I don't remember the name of that episode off the top of my head, because the one with Anthrax was Year of Hell, part 1 and 2, probably the best or one of the best Voyager episodes ever, but I don't remember the other one. And remember, at the end of Voyager, old Janeway cheats and goes back, but that would have to be, she was expecting it to be elliptical, because when old Janeway goes back, she wants to save Tuvok and Seven. But remember, she gets assimilated by the Borg Queen, which means now the Borg has access to their technology. So that's elliptical, because when we come back to Voyager getting home and all that, the reality of the Borg has changed. So that's elliptical as well. See, so Star Trek like mixes them up. Okay, here's another one. I love this one. This one is, you can't change the past. That one you see best in 12 Monkeys. You can't change the past. So what that means is that whatever has happened has happened. And anytime you try to take a jump back in time to affect it, what you do gets folded into what already happened. You can't change the past. So no matter what you do, the events are going to play out as they originally did, and you will find out that your actions got folded into the original timeline. So that's why I don't want to spoil 12 Monkeys, the movie with Bruce Willis and Madeline Stowe and Brad Pitt. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it, because it's incredible. It's one of those movies that's good down to the last scene. You got to watch 12 Monkeys from credits to credits. It's that good. So I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but let's just say it's worth a watch. Okay? So you can't change the past. Now, pay attention to this. The next two I'm going to talk about, they're not actually time travel. That's why people get confused. So this theory here, multiverse, this is not quantum reality. Multiverse is where there are different universes and different versions of each character, but they all exist in the same galaxy. That's why we can access them. Whatever the big bubble is, the universe, the galaxy, the cosmos, multiverse, they all exist in that space. That's why we can get to them. Okay. Now, this can be a big writing cheat, because it means you can bring in people from other universes that had a different fate, or maybe like they died in one, so you bring in another, all that. People do that all the time. That's not time travel. That's multiverse. Okay. This is what they use in Multiverse of Madness, because everybody said, why didn't Wanda, instead of destroying everything and everybody, just go to a universe where that Wanda died and just be the mother to her kids in that universe? That would have saved all that drama. So this is Multiverse of Madness. This is Spider-Man No Way Home. This is because, we had the different Spider-Man and the different villains. And this is also Across the Spider-Verse. That's actually the center focus of Across the Spider-Verse. There's a center chronal point that can access all the different universes, but they still exist in the same cosmos, galaxy bubble, whatever you want to call that. That's also partially what Barry Allen did on the Flash CW, because that was not time travel. That was multiverse, because he went to different things. He saw different things happening, but so you can count that as maybe multi-branch, but he also ended up on Supergirl's Earth. They weren't merged at the time. So that is not fully time travel. That's multiverse. Mixed with this last one I'm going to give you, which is parallel Earths. Parallel Earths. People confuse this one with multiverse. Parallel Earths are not time travel, and parallel Earths are not multiverse. Okay? Parallel Earths are different Earths and altogether different universes and galaxies. So remember, I told you, whatever the big bubble is that's holding together the multiverse, parallel Earths are separate Earths and universes and galaxies. They're separate, and events can unfold in any way they want. Okay? So that's how we get Earth 2 JSA. That's how we get Earth 3 Crime Syndicate and all the different Earths where there are different versions of our characters. They don't have to necessarily be tragic. There's no butterfly effect that the way things unfolded on that Earth is tragic. So that's where we get What If. I'm talking about the comics. What If the comics? Because What If the Disney Plus show is a little bit different because most of that was tragic. But in What If on the comics, we got different parallel Earths where things happen differently. We got different results, different time. My favorite one is What If number 6. What if the Fantastic Four had gained different superpowers? That's where we get Dragonfly, Mandroid, Ultra Woman, and Big Brain. Love it. Okay, so they're totally separate Earths. So if you change something there, it has nothing to do with the Earth that you come from. It can only change stuff there. Like on Earth 3, the original Earth for the Crime Syndicate, that Earth was structured so that evil would always win. So if you went there and you tried to do good, the Lex Luthor from that Earth was a good guy. He could never win because on that Earth, it was structured that evil always won. And that's how Batman figured out how to beat him. Okay? So they're totally separate. They're totally separate from the big bubble, and you have to find a way to travel to them. That's not multiverse. Okay? Sometimes they get written like they're quantum reality, where everything that can happen has happened and they're just at a different frequency, but that's a cheat. Okay, parallel Earths are completely separate in their own pocket universes or galaxies or cosmos, however you want to say it. And events can unfold any way they want to. That's part of what the Flash CW did when he used to travel to Supergirl's Earth, and that is not time travel. Okay, and that's where we get What If in Marvel, and then Elseworlds in DC, where we get Red Sun from. My favorite DC Elseworld stories are Speeding Bullets, where Superman becomes Batman, and Red Rain, where Batman becomes an actual vampire. Holy cow, I love those stories. See, those are parallel Earths. That's not multiverse, and that certainly is not time travel. Okay? So sometimes now you can see from a fan point of view how if all these things get mixed in, it gets confusing really fast. How could it not? So from a writer's point of view, people ask me all the time, what is it that I think? What I think is this right here. I think that whatever theory you're going to use, you need to stick with it throughout the story. That's what I think as a writer. So if you're going to use elliptical, fine. That's all same reality. A past causes the future, causes the past, whatever. If you're going to use single branch, where you change the flow of time and the original timeline's still there, but it starts to fade as the new one takes root, that's cool. If you're going to use multi-branch, although that's the weakest one. Multi-branch is the weakest one from a writer's point of view because it means that you don't really win. You just go create another timeline where you didn't lose. Because the original one where you lost is still there. Understand? The one that Superman uses at the end of Superman, which was originally the ending of Superman 2, but we know that from the Donner cut. But the one that Superman uses where it makes it look like he spins the earth backwards, but he's actually moving so fast, he's going back in time. That's elliptical. But the problems we had with that one was if he saves Lois, that means all the people he saved the first time through died. All them kids on the school bus, he put his body on the train tracks and the train rolled over him. He saved Jimmy from the crumbling dam. He saved the town where the dam had burst and he pulled the rock over there to stop the water. And then he remembered Lois. So in the original one, he saved all the people and then Lois was dead. So if he goes back in time and saves Lois, what happened to all them other people? The movie doesn't really address that. That's elliptical. Okay? So like I said, multi-branch from a writer's point of view is the weakest one because you're saying we lost the fight in this timeline, so we're just going to go back here and create a new branch where we win, which is why Steve was able to create a new reality where he stays with Peggy. But that means what happened to all them folks you left in the original one where you lost? Okay. Then the one with a same space, Time Cop, where you can't interact with your past or future self. I think that's cool. I think that's reasonable. For all of you that are going to say that, we're talking about fictional stuff. Well, of course we do, but I'm a writer and these are stories and this is what we do. Okay. We create stories and As fans, we enjoy these stories. And sci-fi fans, we analyze every little crumb. That's what we do. That's who we are. I got no problem with that. Okay, and then there's a butterfly effect, which is the one I hate the most, which is you step on a leaf in the Jurassic period, and now the Nazis win World War II because you did that. Every possible event can't be that important, and every possible event cannot trigger the kind of domino effect it would take. In City on the Edge of Forever, they tied Edith's fate and future into something she did to change the course of world events, which is entirely possible when you're talking about a world war, but not when you go back somewhere and you sneeze on a salamander, and then all of a sudden, because you were sneezing on a salamander, then all of a sudden, World War III kicks in, and we never live to see, 1999 or whatever. No, okay? That's why I hate it. And always, when it's dealing with relationships, it always means you have to give up the one you love. Time won't leave you alone until you give up the one you love. Can't stand that. If you want to use the Star Trek stuff, you want to use quantum reality. If you want to use a mix of single branch and butterfly effect, whatever, that's cool. You just need to make it clear to your audience what the rules are. Okay? If you want to use 12 Monkeys Past is unchangeable, I like that one. And then also you need to make a difference between multiverse, which is not time travel. So that's why when the Flash does it, it looks confusing. When you're doing multiverse or parallel Earth, that is not time travel. That's in multiverse, you're moving to a different quantum thing. No, I'm sorry, that's quantum reality. You're moving to a different thing where there's another Earth where events unfolded the way they unfolded, but they're still in the same bubble, same cosmos, same bottle, if you will. You're just going to those different universes. And that's why the cheat there is substituting. So sometimes it's written to where you bring in a substitute, it has devastating consequences, which is what Across the Spider-Verse is. And sometimes bringing in a substitute could save the drama across Multiverse of Madness, but they're also in the same bottle. So think about them, like a big bucket, and you have marbles all in a bucket, they're all in the same bucket, multiverse. But parallel Earths is completely different buckets where however things happen on that Earth. So I'm good with all of those. I really am. I told you the ones I like and the ones I don't like. But as a writer, my verdict is you kind of need to pick one, define it clearly, and let your audience know exactly which one you're using and exactly what you're doing, because that makes everything easier on the reader. Okay? Those are my thoughts on time travel. I want you to leave me some comments on Instagram, leave me some comments on Twitter, on Facebook, and YouTube, and we can continue the conversation. All right? Thanks. I'll see you in the next live.